St. Croix County Board meeting. Call it to order at this time. We'll have an invocation at this time from Tim Sackett from Transport for Christ out of Hudson. So everybody stand, please.
Good evening. My name is Tim Sackett, and I serve in a ministry here in the town of Hudson. At the truck stop, we have a church that's made out of a tractor trailer to serve to be a church away from home for the truck drivers. But I'm having a very busy year being a pastor to a lot of local people too that are in a lot of needs. And so I want to thank you. We continue to thank you from the ministerial associations in St. Croix County for this opportunity. And I just want to say thank you for being here to help St. Croix County be prosperous and successful. And you're here to make things better for everybody, aren't you? Is that why you're here? There's very little escape to these days on talking about all the headlines and politics and crime and things that aren't going well. And I often look at the life that Jesus was living when he was living in Israel, and if you looked at their times and our times, I think we'd have to feel more sorry for them than we would for ourselves. Jesus went around the regions in Israel, and he was teaching, and he was preaching, and he was healing people. And in Matthew 9:36, it says that he looked among the crowds, and he had compassion on them because of what he saw, people that were helpless and aimless and confused. They were without any leaders. He said that they were like sheep without a shepherd. And he was not a government leader to be able to solve the problems of poverty or crime or health or finances for the people. That wasn't his power. His power was that he was there to give people hope, to let them see that the greatest success is not in this life, but in the life to come. And he let us know that the afflictions and the burdens that we have in this life are temporary and light. They're not even to be compared to the glories and the joys of eternal life. So no matter how difficult these days are, we have a Savior who is able to give us the kind of hope that we don't live lives that are helpless and aimless and confused. We don't have to be harassed by the things that are going on around us. So as I pray, I just want to pray for the opportunity that you have as leaders to help people that are struggling in whatever way, that you're not here to solve every one of their problems. And as a pastor in a church, I'm not either. But we always point them to the Lord who can and will solve all their problems. Let's pray. Lord God, we're thankful for the words and the messages and especially the life that Jesus lived, to be able to give people hope that even in their burdens, even in the confinements of people who were either blind or lame, they were grief-stricken, they were harassed by potent armies, but he said that they can be free. He said that they can have hope. And he said that they can have a life beyond this one that has joy that cannot even be measured. Our best day in this world will never compare to the greatest day we will have in eternity. So Lord, as we gather as a people in this nation and in this county for this evening, we just pray that the leaders around this table who have been chosen to be here would think in the same way about the people around them who feel like they've been harassed, people that feel helpless, and in whatever way they can tonight and throughout all of their term, that they would make decisions to give people hope, whether it's for veterans, whether it's for teachers, administrators, people in this county. Look to the people, the men and women around here to ask that they make the decisions that they need to make, that their decisions would be of firmness, of a sound mind and sound convictions. And for these things we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Cindy will have roll call at this time. Supervisor Osnes and Schoberg have been excused. They're out of town, so thank you, everyone. At this time, we'll have public comment for things on or off the agenda. And with public comment, it'll be limited to 3 minutes for time. So I will call the people that I have cards for. First one is the Darla Meyer. She wants to step forward.
Darla Myers, 1098 Golden Oaks Lane in Hudson. I have before you a copy of an editorial that was written by Bob Troyer. He is the U.S. Attorney for the District of Colorado, and he wrote this editorial as a commentary as to the experiment, the marijuana legalization experiment that is going on in Colorado. And I just wanted to read a few paragraphs for the record, for the future, just in case this comes up again. In 2012, we were told Colorado would lead the nation on a grand experiment in commercialized marijuana. 6 years later, with 2 major industry reports just released and the state legislature and Denver City Council about to consider more expansion measures, it's a perfect time to pause and assess some results of that experiment. Where has our breathless sprint into full-scale marijuana commercialization led Colorado? And then he cites some of the recent reports that have come out. Now Colorado's youth use marijuana at a rate 85% higher than the national average. Now marijuana-related traffic fatalities are up by 151%. Now 70% of 400 licensed pot shops surveyed recommend that pregnant women use marijuana to treat morning sickness. Now, an indoor marijuana grow consumes 17 times more power per square foot than an average residence. Now, each of the approximately 1 million adult marijuana plants grown by licensed growers in Colorado consumes over 2.2 liters of water per day. Now, Colorado has issued over 40 little publicized recalls of retail marijuana laced with pesticides and mold. And now Colorado has become a booming black market exploiting our permissive regulatory system, including Mexican cartel growers for that black market who use nerve agent pesticides that are contaminating Colorado's soil, waters, and wildlife. Marijuana commercialization has led Colorado to these places. It has also led to Colorado's prominence in other states considering commercialization. As the U.S. Attorney leading other U.S. attorneys on marijuana issues, I have traveled the country and heard what people are saying about Colorado. Do they tout Colorado's tax revenue from commercialized marijuana? No, because there's no net gain. Marijuana tax revenue adds less than 1% to Colorado's coffers, which is more than washed out by the public health, public safety, and regulatory costs of commercialization. So I encourage you to please heed his words and cite these statistics for the future if this comes up again. And remember, this is turning out to be a failed experiment in Colorado. Thank you.
Thank you. Leslie Slowacka.
Thank you, Roger. My name is Leslie Sacchina, and I am a farmer in the Silon Township. That's okay, Roger.
Yep.
Everybody doesn't say my name right, thanks to my husband, but that's okay. I'm also the vice president for our county farm bureau, and I just wanted to thank all of you for the opportunity to allow our farm bureau a little bit of time to review the county's proposed land and water management plan since your last meeting. And given that, I just wanted to, all of you probably have received a letter that we had sent to all of you. If not, I saw it was also in your packets. And so I just wanted to touch base, or just kind of point on a couple items that were in that letter. In general, just, I guess, to reiterate as you go forward in terms of looking at the plan and what that might mean in the future for the direction for our county with land and water. First, our Farm Bureau is very much in support of the plan. We think that it is a good plan for in terms of looking at the direction for managing our county's land and water, our natural resources. But there's two items that we'd like for you to all consider, which you read in the letter going forward in terms of with the plan and also budgeting as you look in the future. And one is in terms of budgeting the funding to take a look at this uniform training and when it comes to testing our surface water. I also had the opportunity the last year to serve on the County Water Quality Committee, and part of what we looked at was also having consistency and consistent data across the board with groundwater testing through well testing. And so this request, this consideration that we're asking about is really the same idea, just on the basis of looking at how we evaluate surface water quality and having uniform, consistent testing, not only for employees who are doing testing, but if there's volunteers and other organizations that are involved and engaged in that. In addition, if our county is really looking at moving forward and managing our land and water and our natural resources in our county, I'd also encourage you to all consider potentially putting in the budget some funds for cost share to help support landowners to utilize best management practices and tools in how they manage their farm, whether they're a farm or a landowner. You don't necessarily have to be engaged in farming to manage your land effectively, and this really goes beyond what other government agencies or programs are offering, and really looking at having the county invest in helping farmers and landowners transition to utilize practices, whether that might be no-till planting, grass bufferways, or cover crops, especially in areas where there might be concern about water quality. And so those are two things that we would like all of you to take into consideration as you look at this plan and also budgeting in the future. So again, thank you for your time, and I hope you have a good meeting tonight. So thank you.
Thank you. Kim Dupree.
Kim Dupree, formerly of Emerald, Wisconsin, and I came tonight to ask for your support for the 10-year plan, Land and Water, as I served on that committee earlier this year. And I just thought it was very important that we do try to make some attempts to manage our water and water quality. And I'm going to share with you an email. I did an open records request with the DNR. And they had an email here from July of 2017 from Stacy Steinke, private water specialist out of Eau Claire. And this is to her boss, Lisa Lehman-Kerler in Madison. And this happened last year. Some of you have heard this before, but I'm going to share it again because I know there's some new board members that maybe haven't heard this. But we had some E. coli well water contaminations last summer in Emerald Township. And so this letter is Stacy's rendition of the events. The neighbors were helpful to sample the wells because the original person who found the E. coli in their well was a local plumber, and they religiously tested their water every 20 years. They were prompted to test their well in June of 2017 after their daughter and son-in-law both suffered bad stomach bugs and other illnesses while staying with them. The initial sample was chloroform positive. The second sample was E. coli present. They shocked and chlorinated their well and got a safe sample. They've been sampling their well annually for 20 years and have never had an issue with E. coli or chloroform. They were not aware of the recent manure spill that was discovered last year at Emerald Sky Dairy until their daughter found some newspaper articles and sent them. This prompted them to help their neighbors test their wells. And here's the scary part, there was no change in their water's color or odor. There was no issues with the well itself. There was no changes to the water system. And they had not noticed any recent land use changes in the area. And so I was disappointed the DNR wouldn't do the advanced testing to find out when you have a cluster of homes, there was 5 homes that came up with these E. coli in their well water, why they wouldn't do the advanced testing to find what happened. It was a human, was an animal. They can even track it via the antibiotic markers to an actual farm. So they said it didn't fit their protocol, and to me, it's like I'd like to know what was going on no matter what the reason was, whether it was the spill or not. And so I just come to ask again for your support for this land and water plan. We need to figure out what's going on, and the plan does a lot of data mapping. It does a lot of data collection, which I think would be helpful in going forward and figuring out what we need to do differently, because obviously what has been going on hasn't been working for some of us in Emerald Township. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. At this time, public comment, we're still open if anybody else wants to speak about something on or off the agenda. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Barry Hammerback, and I just wanted to stop by and introduce myself. I'm running for the Assembly in the 30th District here. And I know some of you in the group here, and I just want to tell you I obviously own property in St. Croix County. I'm an attorney from River Falls. I've been there 40 years or so. And I was prompted to run for the Assembly because of the Foxconn business deal. My opinion is it's the worst deal we've ever seen. And certainly here for Western Wisconsin, once again, we're left out of everything. And so my goal of being elected is to go to Madison and try to get some of our money back out of this Foxconn deal to Western Wisconsin. And I'd also like to go there and work to restore local authority and take the 160 bills or so that have slowly eroded our local rights and your rights to raise money to run the county as necessary and to take appropriate action when needed without any binders on. So I just wanted to say good afternoon to all of you. I'm available. On the website is hammerback.us. I've got some cards I can leave for my phone number. I've got my personal cell number, my personal email. Anything I can do to help St. Croix County I want to do, but I am definitely in favor of clawing back some of our monies, particularly our road money that's there, trying to stop the diversion of another $138 million into local use, which should be in state road use, and that definitely impacts us. So anybody have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them, or I'm available anytime somebody wants to call.
That's fine. Thank you. Is there anyone else that has any public comment at this time for on or off the agenda? Anybody? Yes.
Tim Sackett. I live in Hudson, Wisconsin. On Sunday night, I was working at the truck stop, and I left about 10 p.m. I saw 2 sheriff deputies with their cars parked in the parking lot, and I usually hesitate to go up and ask them what's going on because I always want to know what's going on in the truck stop, and I figured they probably weren't willing or able to share why they were there. But I saw on the news that there was a shooting in Fargo, and a lady took the children and hit the road, and there was a search for the lady, and I don't know for a fact if that's why those deputies were there, but it occurred to me yesterday that it's possible that those 2 deputies were just waiting on duty to find out if that lady would pull off the road and buy gas or come in the truck stop, and it's their job. And I hear the word public safety, and I think it's really important to always think about that at 10 p.m. when the rest of us were all going home and finishing up the football game and getting ready to go to bed safe and sound in our homes, that 2 deputies were standing at a truck stop in the cool, damp weather just waiting for something that could possibly be tragic to happen. And I think it's just fascinating and interesting and comforting to know that these men and women in our law enforcement and our public safety do the kind of things that they do no matter what time of day or night to protect us. So I want to give a shout out to you guys, because you run their budget, to make sure that they're funded and taken care of, and to the sheriff's department for whatever reason those two men were standing out there. I just know that there was a good reason for them to be there. So, thank you.
Anybody else have any public comment at this time? Anybody else have public comment? Anybody else with public comment? Not seeing anything, we will move forward with our agenda. Thank you. This time we'll go into the consent agenda, and I need a motion to move forward on that. Supervisor Coulter, second. Supervisor Brinkman. Any discussion? Any questions? Don't see any.
Mr. Chairman, are you voting?
We will be.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second up there and no questions, no discussions, so we'll vote at this time. It's all yeses. Thank you. So we'll move forward with presentations and recognitions. So we have a Dan Bauerman from the DNR that can move forward here.
I can figure out your highly technical system here, Roger. Very good. Good afternoon. My name is Dan Bauman. I'm with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. I'm the regional director. I work out of Eau Claire, and I cover 19 counties in west and central Wisconsin. Kind of a geography from Hudson to Wausau, Wisconsin Dells down to Prairie du Chien. So that's my geography. I appreciate the invite to be able to come today. I'm here to talk about the St. Croix mitigation agreements that we've all been part of for the last 5 years. Some of you have been on the board that long. I recognize some faces. Others of you are newer, but probably aware not only of the bridge crossing project, the bridge itself, but the planning, the 25 years of planning that went into getting a bridge there, the lawsuits that were involved in all those things, and a final settlement that allowed the bridge to move forward. And part of that settlement included mitigation packages to offset the impact of the bridge. Wisconsin was fortunate enough to get what you see here, a package of $7.2 million. And I've provided a handout. It kind of gives you a summary of those things that were identified as part of our agreement with Minnesota DOT and the Federal Highway Administration. Categorically, what those dollars are supposed to be used for, who is supposed to receive those dollars. What they didn't give us is the format or the foundation to say, how do you govern these things? How do you, St. Croix County was a recipient of a large amount of money. Town of St. Joseph, the Highway 64 Coalition was a group of municipalities that came together to work on fulfilling the obligations or the requirements of utilizing these dollars. I'll also hit on other partners and our advisory team. So it's been 5 years. We're coming to the conclusion of this. I would say it's like giving birth, but I don't know about that. But it's a long process that we all kind of picked up the rope and pulled in the same direction. And because of that, I've also come to recognize the staff in St. Croix County for their commitment, the professionalism, the leadership that they shared through the Community Development Committee, through Pat, and Julie working through finance to administer these dollars. Because with any dollars, as you know, government dollars, they come with a lot of accountability and always the threat of audit. So you need to make sure every penny is accounted for, that all the funding agreements are in place, which had to be developed here, and through the use of not only an advisory team, which included realtors, Chamber of Commerce, Bill Rubin from Economic Development. We did quite a bit of outreach to allow people to come into this process to get a feel for what the MOUs or the agreements we're trying to achieve, and then provide some recommendation to the Department of Natural Resources, who ultimately had to sign on the line to say, we will be responsible for the appropriate use of these dollars. We signed an agreement with Federal Highway and Minnesota DNR. We weren't one to ever going to turn down $7.2 million in Minnesota's money. I think that would have been foolish, but we know it was going to take a lot of work. And through that process, I'll just quickly hit some of the agreements and some highlights of each agreement, and then at the end try to sum it up, and if I can, Roger, present an award to the folks in the Community Development Department. So the first two ones were to offset the impact, the visual impact and the resource impact of the bridge, where it was going to land on the Wisconsin side. And as you see here and on the sheet I gave you, there was $2 million that were directed to the Wisconsin DNR for purchases of property to offset, to meet our goals for resource protection, natural scenic beauty on the National Wild and Scenic Riverway. And then $2.5 million, of which $2 million went to St. Croix County and $500,000 went to the town of St. Joseph. The department struggled with purchasing any properties. We were able to expend maybe $140,000, but that was it. We have a different approach than the county or the town to purchasing lands for the DNR to use. You have to be within a project boundary. They have to meet a set of criteria. You have to offer the lowest appraised price. And we didn't get too many people that were interested in selling their property to the state that met our criteria for the lowest appraised price to appraisals. We couldn't exceed that. So we ended up with a couple of properties. One, as I recall, was to an extension or a connection for a trail associated with the state park, and another was for better access to some of the trout streams in the area. Through Pat's guidance, working with Ellen, of course the committee, Dan's committee, and this board, we were able to work through what does the department do with that other $1.86 million that we were likely going to be unable to spend within that time frame. We developed a transfer agreement, and those dollars were transferred to MIN 95705 for use by St. Croix County and town of St. Joe to meet the needs of the county and the town in this bluffland protection agreement. Then I have another slide here that shows exactly the parcels and the size of the parcels, some significant legacy parcels for St. Croix County and town of St. Joe, and ones that likely would only be available once in a lifetime at the right time through the right conversations that I know that staff here in the county and maybe some of you had with these landowners to say we have a really unique opportunity. I also think that transfer of those dollars to the county was beneficial because then you could leverage those dollars against state stewardship dollars, which was done by Ellen and her group and the county to apply for those stewardship dollars that ended up being, I think, well over $800,000 that went in addition to the dollars that were transferred and the agreements that the county got through Minnesota DNR. I know that there's planning and development, and I've heard there's some conversation about hunting and some of those things that are happening at the committee, and we'll work through all of those things. But securing these properties in perpetuity is really the requirement of the MOU, and that's done. So I applaud all the board members for your foresight and your willingness to take on this, and the staff as well, to put in the effort to have the conversations, to go out and get the appraisals, because we all know that land acquisition by municipal governments is a huge struggle. So thank you so much. Some of the other agreements, the corridor communities, I mentioned those, and that's, it was 7 to 9 townships, cities, villages along Highway 64, including town of St. Joseph, all the way out to Deer Park. They got together about monthly, if not every 6 weeks for the last 5 years, and worked on projects, as you see here, identified to improve wastewater treatment facility needs. Those were in municipalities, the Deer Parks, Village of Star Prairie, Somerset, and New Richmond. To talk about all the facility plans for the wastewater treatment plants were updated through this process, paid for. That group got together, decided on who was going to chair that coalition, and developed their own governance to be able to say which project meets our needs and work together so that it didn't pit one municipality against the next. They worked in unison, and they tried to develop projects that New Richmond may be out in front on wastewater optimization to get better phosphorus treatment, and they were sharing that information with Somerset, Star Prairie, and Deer Park. So it was a great coalition, a bunch of leaders there from municipal staff to elected town board officials that participated. The other piece of that was the stormwater, another $400,000 that was earmarked for the coalition to work on impacts of development on stormwater quality. how do we protect the waters, as was mentioned earlier, the surface waters and the groundwaters in St. Croix County with the increase and potential growth that may come as part of the bridge. So they've done a lot of ordinance work, all the municipalities did. They did some construction work, town of Somerset, on a big erosion on the Apple River. So some of that project pieces, and with this group, they identified that there should be a deliverable. So if you get money for something, you need to come back and report out and identify the deliverable. You need to be accountable for the dollars, and if that's going to be audited, which I think we know it will be, how do you account for those? And that you're actually, if you find something like with wastewater, there's a lot of distribution system inspection that was done. And if there was a crack before they got the money to do the inspection, this group took it upon themselves to commit to fixing the problems. So there was wastewater treatment systems where distribution, they had leakages either into the system or out of the system, and they're putting plans together to fix those, which is an improvement for groundwater quality and surface water quality. So hats off to that group. They want to continue to meet. They talked about what do we do next. They should be done with all their projects by the end of this calendar year, and they want to continue to get together to talk about how those municipalities on that corridor work together to have an equitable government, or a government that works better together, which didn't work together at this level, although they worked together in the past. The next two are updates to comprehensive plans, and I know the county's going through a huge one. And that should be, I think, Ellen, May 2019 at the latest, I believe. Town of St. Joe needed to do the same thing. So a lot of effort there and money put forward to be able to accomplish those things. And then $500,000 for the green space protection, and that is also in conjunction with acquisition to offset impacts. And if you get new people here and new residents, they expect some services, and maybe green space is one of those. Where can I go to recreate? Because that, to me, is the gem of St. Croix County, is your natural resources, and having places for people to go and enjoy those are critical. Just a couple other ones. Also funded was UW River Falls on enhancing intergovernmental collaboration, and that was one where they kicked in 20-some thousand to the economic impact study that the county did. They were a partner in that. And then they did sponsor with the St. Croix River Association the boat trainings. Every year they go out and get municipal officials on a tour boat. They get on the St. Croix, look at issues up and down the river. It's very educational and been very successful. Deb Ryan and her crew do a great job. They also do a summit in that some of these dollars were used to sponsor as well, to give scholarships to those say farmers that maybe don't think they have a role in water quality on the St. Croix, or students that may come to help educate. Great partner, UW River Falls, and I think they just finished up a series of educational intergovernmental collaborations where they went out and presented, say, the CAFO or the biodigester issue. What is a biodigester? What are the fears? What are the knowns, unknowns? And they use that as kind of educating townships around and answering questions along the way. 95,706, these are dollars, $400,000 that came to the department to administer. All these projects, as you see here, and who they went to, were vetted through the advisory team. We talked about how they fit into the St. Croix, water quality on the St. Croix, and that's really what these dollars, as you see here from the titles, what they were used for. As you're aware, the Basin team is a bi-state, multi-agency group of scientists that get together to talk about water quality in the watershed. And as you know, the St. Croix River watershed is huge. It's 2 states. And a lot of work has been done to do a state of the lake report. We were able to, Ellen was able to twist enough arms that 30,000 of these dollars went towards the county's LIDAR effort, which I think is going to pay dividends for decades for the county. And I think it was a good use of the money, these monies as well, because those things can be used from everything from floodplain mapping to finding out in a SWOT model what watersheds are most vulnerable for erosion. So great projects there. All of these have been completed, and I would say that overall, the $7.2 million that are as part of the mitigation package is probably 95% complete at this point. So the efforts over the last 5 years have been to get us to that point, and we're kind of over the crest, headed downhill. There's just some cleanup work to be done on some small projects. All the projects have been identified, almost, I should say. Ellen and I were just talking about that before the meeting, that there's still a little bit of work to do, but we're confident that these dollars will be expended in the benefit of water quality, groundwater and surface water in St. Croix County, as well as the acquisitions that'll make in perpetuity places for residents and visitors to recreate for years to come. Because of the efforts of the coalition, the partnership team, the advisory team, and of course St. Croix County itself, the group that's been working on this for 5 years were recognized or nominated for a Secretary's Director Award. And these are an annual award. 5 of them are handed out through the state, and they're to recognize a high level or outstanding service by an external to further the mission of the department. And in this case, it was protection of groundwater and surface water quality and growth management. So Roger, if you're okay, I'll just read what the citation is, and if Ellen or some of her staff want to come up,
Sure, go ahead.
I can present it to them. As you'll see here on the slide, these are folks and just my general understanding of how they participated. I know that there's a lot of people pulling on this rope, and I'm sure Pat was a little irritated because we're always trying to get a signature on something. He signed as many of these funding agreements as I did, and there's probably 30 of them out there that we had to manage. I also want to recognize that St. Croix County graciously allowed our annual report and our final report to live on your website. So they're out there. If you have any questions about what this group did through the mitigation project, there's annual reports out there that have all our meeting minutes, all the funding agreements, where all the money went, and we'll be using that to be kind of our audit material moving forward. So thank you very much for being able to house that for us. It's easy to find, and your website's fantastic, much better than ours. So with that, the 2017 Secretary's Director Award goes to the St. Croix Crossing Mitigation Team in recognition by DNR for your leadership and support of the St. Croix Crossing mitigation projects with the goal to protect water quality, build local partnerships, and plan for future growth with an emphasis on conserving our natural resources. And I can't stress enough the leadership and professionalism by everybody I've worked with in St. Croix County. As I said, I work in 19 counties, and your group here and community development knocks it out of the park. They really do. They're fantastic. Whenever we had a challenge, we figured out a way to get over the hurdle. Communication was always seamless. So thank you very much.
Well, I'm going to ask a couple of my staff, basically Julie and Brett and Tammy, who are all identified up above on the screen, to please step up here also and just be recognized. And I just have a very few words to say. Thank you, Dan and the state, on behalf of myself, my department, and St. Croix County and our committee. We really don't expect recognition. We do the work we do because it means a lot to us. And so when we are given recognition, it's a really big deal to us. And so thank you. We've spent over 5 years working on a lot of mitigation projects, really diverse, a lot of different things, as Dan explained. Some of them are actually still ongoing, and we'll be showing them to you, and you'll be working on them also. They've been pretty amazing. I think the accomplishments have been pretty significant. And it's been a tremendous amount of work, but an incredible amount of fun also. We're really proud of what we've accomplished. I think that every member of our department has contributed in some way. They've provided their time, their expertise, their ideas, their feedback, their energy, and it's meant a lot. These 3 people have done an amazing job. They've spearheaded projects, they've provided leadership, they've contributed their skills, they've accomplished things that I'm not sure they knew they could do, but they did it, and they learned a lot in the process, and they're really the rock stars of this group. But on the other hand, I'd also like to recognize that we had a lot of other staff who contributed real significant things because of their own personal expertise. Some of them are here tonight. Joe Ayers, Nicole Hayes, and Kevin Graybow, all part of our team who are here, and some people who couldn't be here tonight, Britta Kelly, also John Hilgers, Ryan Yarrington, Aaron Mason, all people who have really made a big difference. And I would just like to add that There are even people who are not here tonight who were our limited term employees, Dave Sanders and Grant Schertz, who really stepped up and were amazing part of our team until they left us to go to better jobs. But, but that's okay. I'd just like to add too that I'm very lucky that I work with such talented and dedicated people who always go above and beyond. Every day I'm amazed by what they accomplish. And I'm very proud of them and what we've accomplished, and I really appreciate that we've received this award. So thank you for the state, from all of us.
Thank you for that. That was nice. We'll move on with our presentations. St. Croix County Library for Barb Kruger.
Good afternoon, good evening. I'm Barbara Kruger from the Deer Park Public Library. I serve currently as chair of the County Library Planning Committee. Last year I was vice chair, which is how I ended up being the person giving this presentation tonight. I'd like to thank the supervisors for the opportunity to provide you with this overview of the services that are provided by the 11 St. Croix County libraries. So I have a picture is worth 1,000 words. So I have a short video that highlights the services and programs offered by the libraries this past year. I'm going to back it up so it wanted to start right away. Pause it. So, and afterwards I have a handout that will go along with it. And let's see if I can remember where the volume is on this. Cindy, I might need that little assistance. Let's see, nope, oh, volume, oh, there we go. All right, and let's see if I can get it up. All right, thank you. Technology always is. Libraries serve our communities through literacy, access, and engagement. Literacy services include early literacy, summer reading, author visits, book clubs, online resources, workshops, media fact-checking, and reference services.
Fur hat. Warm woolen suit. Who has a fur hat?
Sean, I would read.
Libraries provide access to job search resources, computer and internet access, basic technology instruction, job search workshops, and test preparation. Libraries promote engagement through civic engagement, public policy research resources, partnerships with schools, parks, businesses, and other community nonprofits. Libraries are municipal resources dedicated to providing open access to information, materials, and services in a sustainable environment that supports and connects all community members. So thank you, as I said, for this opportunity. On the sheet that I'm passing out, you will see that there was a total circulation of 812,640 items to St. Croix County residents. 67% of those circulated items, or 557 items, was to residents with a library in their municipality. 33%, or 269,000 of those items, were circulated to county residents without a library in their municipality. 71% of the circulation provided by county libraries was to residents, with 29% of the circulation provided to residents outside of St. Croix County. So, do you have any questions? I hope you use our libraries, encourage family members to use our libraries. We do a lot of tremendous activities, programs. You have a question? We'll help you find the answer to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. We have annual reports now. We'll start with the St. Croix County Fair. Gail Meyer.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the board, guests, family, friends, visitors, no, anyway. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Gail Meyer, and currently I am president of the St. Croix County Fair Association. I'm pleased to be here this evening to share a little bit with you about the St. Croix County Fair. Hopefully you all received your official annual report packet, which was submitted, and that has a bit of a visual recap of some highlights of the fair. And it has our goals in there, as well as budget requests for continued improvements at the fair. However, after my brief talk, if you do have any questions about that report, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Tonight, I would like to give you some brief highlights of the 2018 St. Croix County Fair. Excuse me, but first I would like to share some thoughts about the importance of the fair industry in Wisconsin. All across the state, county fairs play a vital role in the economy, society, and heritage of rural communities. As agriculture is the backbone of our economic system, the county fair is the backbone of promoting that agriculture experience to everyone. The fair offers visitors the opportunity to see, hear, touch, taste, smell the richness and variety of what our county has to offer through a teaching and learning experience that is enjoyable for all ages. From Legos to livestock, the St. Croix County Fair does offer something for everyone, and it's our responsibility to carry those traditions on for the future generations. Now for some highlights of this fair. For those of you that may have been there or may have not, perhaps you saw our theme that was quite prominent throughout the county. The theme this year was, and think Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, it was like, there's no place like the fair. Well, Dorothy and her ruby red slippers were all over the fairgrounds. The kids did the Promote the Fair sign contest, which used that theme quite extensively. And in fact, Today, I was in Ladysmith at the Wisconsin Association of Fairs district meeting, and our fair received an award for the best use of theme of the 31 fairs that were visited by the state coordinator. Another interesting highlight of our fair is that we are a free fair. For those of you that don't know that, we are one of only just a very few fairs in the state, and there are 75 fairs district, county fairs district in the state fair. We're one of only a few that have a free fair where we do not charge admission for any gate admission, entertainment, all the exhibit buildings and so forth. Exhibits. This year we had 803 exhibitors in 4-H, FFA, other youth organizations, senior citizens, and open class, who brought in 9,350 entries to the fair. Premiums, which are rewards for bringing in those exhibits and getting ribbons on them, we paid $11,676 this year in premiums. Now you may wonder who brings the most, what is the most exhibits, class of exhibits that we have at the fair. Believe it or not, it is photography. This year there were 1,202 exhibits of photography. Now the people at the fair, we wouldn't have a fair if the people didn't come. And this year was a great year for participation at the fair. We had a little bit of rainy weather on Thursday, which kind of put a damper on our horse pull, but we didn't cancel it. And the county employee picnic, their numbers might have been down that Thursday night, but they still had a pretty good turnout. For the most part, everything was really good. We had packed crowds for the tractor pull, the entertainment. We did have some new entertainment at our pavilion, so it was really, really a good fair for that. Now for some updates. We made a couple improvements to the fair this year, one of which was the renovation of the poultry rabbit barn, which you can see there on your screen. That's what it used to look like. And that was used an old highway department building, and then we put a new outside on it and finished that off, so now it models all the other buildings, new buildings on the fair. That's very, very important and facelift that we did this year. Another highlight was that in 2015 we took out a loan, $125,000 loan, to construct a horse barn. This summer at the fair, we retired that loan, and it has been paid off in full. On the financial side of things, we were very pleased this year that we had an increase in sponsorships, which directly affect the operation of our fair. And with fair receipts and funds that we get from winter storage, that will allow us to do some capital improvements that we've been kind of putting on the back burner for a while. Our goals for the future, since we had great success with the renovation of the poultry building, now we hope to be able to do that to the open class building going forward this year. We're going to try to complete as many stages as possible with new lighting in several of our buildings, where we're going to replace the existing fixtures with some LED units. We want to construct a multi-purpose livestock building. That's going to be our next big building project, and that will hold possibly swine, sheep, and goats. Due to the condition of those current buildings, this is going to be a major project. And the stretch goal for that is to have that open and ready by the fair in 2020. A huge goal for the near future for us is the potential reality of a safe room and emergency shelter on the fairgrounds. Working with several groups, application for FEMA grant funds is currently in its initial stages. We're very, very hopeful that positive consideration for our application will be given, and that this will be a reality in the very, very near future. With or without the addition of the safe room emergency shelter on the grounds, one of the things we would like to accomplish is the development of a communication plan to link all 41 acres area of the fairgrounds with a public address system, and that is a major goal. That, along with perhaps site-wide Wi-Fi, try to say that 3 times, would be a very much needed improvement. Planning for the fair is a year-round task, even though many people don't know this. What they also don't know is that we don't do it alone. There's so many people who contribute in so many ways to the success of this great community event. So I want to give a very, very special thank you to the entire county board for your continued support in so many ways. Thank you to our current representatives, Linda Miller and Dan Hansen, but especially to Judy Achterhoff for her steadfast support and very active participation. I want to strongly encourage each and every one of you to attend the St. Croix County Fair in 2019 and see for yourself the tradition of agriculture is very much alive in our county. Consider what you might have to exhibit next year as well. So save the date, July 17th through the 21st, 2019. And the theme for next year is Blue Jeans and Country Dreams. So if you have any questions, anyone, I'd be happy to answer them.
I don't have a question, but I just want to, 99% of everything that happens at the fair is volunteer.
Correct.
They get very little financing from the county, so it's a real dedicated group that step up and step in and help out wherever they're needed, and it's just really a great thing to see and participate. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gil. Our next one is the UW Extension, Kristen Bruder.
Hi there. Let's see if I can. See if I can figure this out. I am a Google person, so there we go. So PowerPoint sometimes eludes me. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to allow me to come and talk to you a little bit about UW Extension and the work we've been up to. My name is Kristen Bruder. I'm the Area Extension Director, and I'll explain that role in a few minutes. So as you may or may not know, I know a lot of you are new to the board. Some of you may have engaged in Extension in a number of ways outside of the county, but we have gone through significant reorganization over the last 2 years. We have implemented this reorganization, and we are in that implementation stage, nearing the end now. So we are living our new model and enjoying our new model. I'm here today to just kind of talk to you about what that new model looks like, some of the changes that has happened in Extension, and then lastly, what changes that looks like right here in St. Croix County. So our mission hasn't changed. Our purpose is the same. We embody the Wisconsin idea, and we bring the resources to the local communities to address those issues. A little bit of background for those of you who are new to Extension or not familiar with us. We offer timely access to the university research, so we have that connection to the university. We have a presence in all 72 counties and 5 UW systems, 4-year campuses that is, and 3 tribal nations. And our programs are tailored to the community needs, and I'll talk about that in a minute on exactly how we establish those needs. And we have a mix of federal, state, and county funding sources. Our reorganization primarily happened because we had a $3.2 million cut from our state funding partners. And so that did prompt the reorganization because we are mainly a, as is the county, people organization. And so we really had to reassess our programs and align those with that budget cut. But it gave us a great opportunity to take a look at our, how we operate and what we do. And we made some significant changes. So our importance to local counties, such as St. Croix County. We have access to world-class research and faculty to partner in addressing those real-world problems and concerns that come down right here to St. Croix County. Our county educators understand the local needs. They are in the community, they work in the community, and they connect St. Croix County to those statewide resources. UW Extension participated in an applied research project, so those cutting-edge research that's coming forward, we're able to access that and implement those in the county, in the counties across the state. A little bit of history. In 1965, we were considered a broader super extension program, and we separated from UW-Madison. We were one of the first to do that across the nation and became our own entity. We are a land-grant university, and many extension programs are still connected to their land-grant universities. We separated in 1965. In 2005, we merged with UW colleges, and that became under one chancellor. Just recently, on July 2nd, we reunited with our land-grant university, so we now have merged once again with UW-Madison. And so this restructuring that happened, that came down from the president of the UW system, impacted the UW colleges as well, as many of the two-year colleges merged with those four-year colleges. So that's a new change. What does that mean for the local communities, the local counties? No changes to cooperative extension organization, programming, or day-to-day work will happen because of that merger. All current contracts are honored by UW-Madison. The transition will happen in 2018, but also into 2019. So a lot of our systems obviously need to merge. OHR, financials, IT, all of that needs to merge with UW-Madison. And so that change will happen throughout 2019. And you may see a little red bar at the bottom with Bucky Badger next year, but we'll see how that pans out. We're not quite sure yet. But we hope that we can align with UW-Madison and their programming and bring that to the counties in a better, more beneficial relationship. So let's look at the new and old extension. Some things haven't changed. Some things that we're working haven't changed. Geographically, a huge change that happened was we were 4 regions, and now we're 22 areas. These areas are now led by area extension directors. That's my role, that's my title for this area. We are Area 5 and cover St. Croix, Pierce, and Polk counties. My position is fully state paid, so that there is no county dollars that come out of my position. And I oversee the programmatic and administrative duties of the area. It allows us to align better with local government, like yourself, with administration, and then also with our county partners. Continue to tailor programs to local needs, although our programming has changed. So programmatically, what do we look like? We had 5 different programs or program areas in the old model. In the new model, we have 2. We have agriculture and natural resources, which you see on the screen and what that includes. And we have youth, family, and community development, which includes the programming that you see on the screen. This is a little hard to see, I understand, and it's a little colorful, but this is our organizational structure now. So this gives you an idea of what we look like organizationally. So on the green area, you see the North Zone and the South Zone. We are part of the North Zone. Area 5 is part of the Northern Zone. And so we have a Northern Zone Assistant Dean that covers this area, and then there's a Southern Zone Assistant Dean that covers the lower part of the state. From there, we have 2 program areas, as I mentioned. When you look at the Agriculture and Natural Resources, we have 2 institutes, the Agriculture Institute and the Natural Resource Institute. Our educators are required to align with one of those institutes. They may program in a second institute as well. The youth, family, and they can go across program areas. So for instance, our Agriculture Institute, somebody could have their first institute in agriculture, but their second institute might fall in community development. So you see with the youth, family, and community development, there are 4 institutes that our educators can align with and what they do in those areas. What has changed in terms of fee structure and what has impacted all of the counties across the state in a good way, I think, is that we have switched from a pay for the educator to a pay for service. And so what that means is that you still have a local connection, because one of the things we found was that counties really wanted their local person. And so you still have a local connection. But what we do now is we look at what are the needs of the area and how can we best address those. And it might not be best addressed by that educator, but that educator is charged with figuring out how to best meet those needs. What this means too is that each of our educators has a flat fee attached to them. So we had a 60-40 split in the past. And now across the state, every educator, the counties pay the same. So you pay the same as what Milwaukee County pays for an educator, for example, and the state covers the rest of that cost. And the contracts now follow the county fiscal year, whereas before we followed the state year, which made it extremely complicated for those of us who were involved with that. So what does it look like at the local level? We have Ryan is still our agriculture educator. He is a full-time staff, and he is your point person for St. Croix County. 4-H Youth Development, Heather is our full-time 4-H Youth Development educator. She's been here for a few years as well. Here's a change with community development. Eric Biltonen now covers also Polk County. And so the flat fee is shared between Polk County and St. Croix County. His home office is still St. Croix County, but half of his time is split now to Polk County. We have a health and well-being educator that is a brand new position that will be actually that position closed for applications on Monday, and we will be screening. We have 37 applicants for that position, so a lot of interest in that position, and we'll be screening those this week and hopefully having that person on board by November. We also have another new position, the 4-H coordinator position, and basically that position, the reason why, and that one is also shared with Polk County. And when I came in a year and a half ago, I really looked at what are the efficiencies that we need to make in St. Croix County, what are the needs, and how can we best address those. And what we found was both Polk County and St. Croix County really wanted more youth development. 4-H is such a robust program that we couldn't really do a lot into that youth development. And so we developed a 4-H coordinator position that will be between two counties that will kind of take over some of those dual duties that 4-H has and create those efficiencies across those two counties, freeing up Heather and Chuck to do more youth development in the community. That position closed on Monday as well. We screened 27 applicants, and we are bringing 6 forward for preliminary interviews on Friday. So we hope to have that person on board in November. And then horticulture, that program has changed drastically in the state and has changed in St. Croix County. If you care to know more about that, I'd be happy to talk with you more outside of this presentation. But Diana Alfuth, who is in Pierce County, she will be covering St. Croix County as well, starting January 1 at a .25 appointment. And programming in St. Croix County, really our group, our area has really taken a look at the needs through a situational analysis that have been brought to the state now and looked at through a state lens. If you're interested, I have what we came up with in our situational analysis and what the needs look like. I have a bulleted sheet here of the needs that we will be trying to address here in St. Croix County in the next year with all of our new staff and old staff and our new alignment. And so we're really excited to start this new journey and begin really some impactful programming, continue some impactful programming here in St. Croix County. I am happy to visit with any of you about extension, about our changes, about what we look like, what we do at any time. Please feel free to reach out and connect. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to entertain those. Otherwise, thank you for the opportunity and have a great night. Thank you.
That's neat. Thank you. The next one's our Community Development Annual Report. Ellen Denzer.
Good evening again. So, community development has a wide variety of responsibilities. The annual report is obviously our opportunity to share our accomplishments, our concerns, and our objectives with all of you, and hope that it provides a better understanding of what we do and how we do it. So hopefully you've all had a chance to review our annual report, and do you have any questions?
Yeah, I'm just looking at packet page 22, and I was looking at the last item on there, that we completed acquisition of pictometry, aerial photography, oblique photography in parentheses, and made available to local officials, assessors, and developers. Does that mean we bought a drone? Or
No, that's not what it means. That means that we had when you do aerial photography, there's a flight over the county, and when we did the LiDAR, there was a flight over the county. Pictometry is a different kind of flight, and it's another word used for it is oblique, and basically it's extremely valuable to local assessors and even our cities and villages, because it's so accurate that you can do things like measure curb and gutter, you can measure housing height, you can measure a wide variety of things. It literally will give you a depth perception, and that is available on when we completed the actual purchase, we start making products for our local communities, like we did with LiDAR and like we do with our aerial photography, and those products will be coming out very soon. It was a multi-year flight over the county.
Okay, and we have a policy that we don't go searching for property violations, so we won't be using any of that for to look up property violations. Is that correct?
We could. Local municipalities could. We don't really have enough staff or enough time, but I know that other counties, you don't have to have the oblique photography to do that. I know of other counties who have used their aerial photography, they're not as busy as us, but have used that to identify illegal property uses and have actually pursued violations. Right now, like I said, we probably don't have anywhere near enough staff or time available. We're too busy.
Well, don't get me wrong, I don't want you to do that. So,
well, we could if
I don't
the
want you to
group
do
wanted
that.
us to do it.
I'm not sure that our residents would like the idea of us snooping on them like that, so.
The county that did do it, and I think there's more than one that has, found it was a very valuable exercise. It seriously increased assessed valuation and property taxes and raised revenues for the county government. So I think they did it for a very valid reason. Other questions?
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. We'll move on to our County Administrator report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. On your consent agenda this evening, you had the appointment of our new health officer for St. Croix County. At the time that we took up the consent agenda under discussion, I missed opportunity to introduce Kelly Engen. Kelly is currently employed by Eau Claire County Public Health. She serves as the preparedness specialist, and prior to her work in Eau Claire County, Kelly was employed by Barron County as their health officer for a period of 4 years. She has a master's degree from the University of Minnesota in public health, and she's worked on public health accreditation in county government, and so she'll be very helpful in assisting our county in our accreditation process. And she meets all the local health requirements required by the state of Wisconsin for public health level 3 agencies, which we are. So briefly, just want to introduce Kelly to the county board and welcome Kelly to St. Croix County.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the appointment and
looking forward to working with all of you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Kelly.
Congratulations. That's it for my report, Mr. Chairman. So we can get into our business items now.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to business items. Resolution to adopt the St. Croix County 2018-28 Land Water Resource Management Plan. Do I have a motion? Motion by Supervisor Hanson. Do I have a second? Second by Supervisor Peterson. Discussion on that.
Well, this has been delayed for 1 month. It's been a good, productive month, and I think that we've made a really excellent, I think, improvement in communication with the Farm Bureau, which I appreciate very much. Hopefully, everybody's had a chance to look over this plan, which has not changed since it was introduced last month. It continues to be a sound and excellent plan, and I hope that you all vote for it and we can dispatch this quickly.
Any other discussion or questions? Not seeing any. We ready to vote? We got a motion and a second, so we'll vote. That's all yeses. Thank you. Our next one is resolution designating an official county newspaper. Do I have a motion for that? Supervisor Peterson. Do I have a second? Supervisor Tatum. Any discussion on that?
This item comes in front of the board from the Administration Committee with a recommendation for approval. Historically, dating back many years, St. Croix County has annually rotated its official newspaper designation. The state requires county government to at least designate one official county newspaper for the publication of notices in the paper. St. Croix County chose many years ago to rotate it annually, alphabetically, based on circulation numbers and the fact that we're trying to post these notices in not only on our website, but also the newspaper in St. Croix County with highest circulation. And so residents and citizens of St. Croix County will know to either check with the Hudson Star Observer if this is approved, or in addition, the county website. For sake of consistency and ease for our residents to know, rather than looking in, say, the Woodville Leader, which has very low circulation, for them to be posting our notices, it's not very conducive to getting information out. So we're still designating one paper, the one with the highest circulation, and then also posting on our website. Eventually, my hope is that the state of Wisconsin will move away from the need to post in local newspapers and just use county websites for these types of notices. Because I think if you see the circulation numbers are continuing to drop. So this is a recommendation from the Administration Committee.
Supervisor Hanson.
So it occurs to me, I looked at this and the first thing I thought was, that makes sense. And it does. But what maybe we never took into account is that the newspaper with the highest circulation is also in the city that has the very best bandwidth. And if we're going to rely on posting this online to make up the slack for the fact that people who don't look at the newspaper are catching it online, well, you're looking at the same population. So the folks who are reading that Woodville newspaper, they don't have bandwidth. They're out in a way, and they're not going to be accessing the internet quite as easily. They might go to the library, or they might come into town or something and access a Wi-Fi, but we might be limiting the opportunity to reach them. I just want you to think about that. And what's the value of that?
Supervisor Oxroff.
kind of going along with what Supervisor Hanson said, and it's, you know, here I am promoting my east side of St. Croix County because a lot of people don't have internet access. And if it's also saying that at least one paper, I don't see why we couldn't have 3 or 4. I don't know how much that would cost to put the notices in them, but to equalize out equal access for all, instead of just those that happen to live in an urban area with better facilities than a rural area. I just would like people on the east side to be able to have the same access.
Supervisor Brinkman first, then Supervisor
I guess
Peterson.
that's what my question is, and as scary as this sounds, I agree with Supervisor Hanson. Was there, I guess what I'd like to ask the admin committee is, was there consideration given to the differences in broadband availability on the eastern side of the county compared to the west?
Supervisor Peterson.
I think to, oh, go ahead.
I'm rural also, but we talked about, in the previous years, it was spread 1 year around to each of these papers. So you had a period of 1 full year where the Woodville Leader was the only paper carrying this. And their circulation is very low, so you have a year when the whole county is kind of off grid there. The broadband thing is an issue in some ways, but also I suspect that the Hudson paper may be available at convenience stores and so forth throughout the county. So all that said, we did not feel that in this austere budget time that we should be spending money for multiple papers when there's only one required for the county to list their stuff in. So we weighed the whole thing, and it just seemed to make sense to go with the county with the most circulation, or the paper with the most circulation.
Any other questions? Any other discussion? Not seeing any. Cindy, we have a motion second, so we'll vote. Four noes, the rest yes, that passes. Thank you. We'll move on to resolution approving funding plan for the 2019-20 CIP projects. I need a motion to approve that. Supervisor Peterson, second. Supervisor Hanson. Discussion on that.
This resolution comes in front of you from the Administration Committee, which was approved at their last meeting. We had discussion about the capital improvement plan. As you recall, this started back in July when the Committee of the Whole met and we reviewed each project with some detail with the various department heads. We took that preference from the board, and we tried, as the capital improvement review team, I tried to develop an overall plan, which I felt based on feedback from the Committee of the Whole meeting, and then also at our monthly committee meetings over the past 2 months, we've had some of the standing committees, most of them review capital projects that that were in front of their committee, and so we tried to garner some feedback from the standing committees as well. And what I presented to the Administration Committee was a slightly narrowed down list of projects focusing on 2019 and 2020 in terms of funding the projects for 2019 and 2020. Presented 2 options to the committee. One included a state trust fund loan. The other option was no use of bonding or borrowing, no use of a state trust fund loan, just utilizing CIP existing fund balance, and also a transfer of approximately $2 million from the undesignated fund balance. So the project, the total amount for what was recommended was almost 4 million, slightly under 3.9 million. As I said, 1.8 of that 3.9 is existing CIP fund balance, along with a $2.1 million transfer from the undesignated fund balance. As you recall, with our auditor's presentation, our existing fund balance is approximately 52%, quite a bit higher than our 35 plus or minus 3%, which is our fund balance policy approved by the board. So with a $2.1 million transfer from the general fund, it would drop it to about 47%, which is still above the 35 plus or minus 3%, but still very, very responsible fund balance remaining. So that was what was presented to the administration committee. They chose option B, which is the no use of state trust fund loan, a $3.9 million CIP funding 2019 and 2020 with a slightly reduced list. I listed in your packet those projects which fell from the funding line. That does not mean that the projects that I'm not recommending for funding go away. They're still on the radar screen, and when we meet again next year, looking ahead to 2021, we need to keep those projects front and center and determine whether or not there is a high priority for including funding for those projects. The two that fell out are sizable. All total of both projects that fell off were approaching $1 million. So it's not that those projects aren't important, they are, but in terms of overall priorities, knowing that the board is not in at least my read of the board is that there is no strong desire for additional state trust fund loans or borrowing. And so I had to scale back our requested list, and I think it's a very responsible recommendation, and the administration committee supported it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or discussions? Supervisor Nordstrand.
I wanted to begin by asking about the resolution itself. I went back and looked I understand this is every 2-year process of establishing a CIP with a 5-year look and doing planning going forward for those 5 years. I went back and looked at the 2016 CIP and resolution, and that resolution was described, it's almost word for word the resolution we have before us. I'll say that, except for the part at the bottom and how you pay for it. The first paragraph, the county administrator presented a plan on such and such date, and then it went on to say, whereas the projects proposed in the capital improvement plan are in the best interest of the county to maintain and improve the assets of St. Croix County, it said that as well. But it was, in fact, a resolution, by its own terms, adopting the 2017 to 21 capital improvement plan. Now, this resolution is different this year. Now, let me say one thing about that. There was an attached report that was the 2017 to 21 capital improvement plan with a summary from the county administrator of each of the proposals, some written description, detail on each of the projects, much like the detail that we saw in the July Committee of the Whole, but that was actually provided in the resolution. In other words, you could look at that and you could understand what it was we were approving and that we were approving a 5-year plan. This resolution, however, is characterized as a resolution approving funding for 2019 and 20 CIP projects, which is fine. I'm not against having a resolution that just does that. But the resolution goes on to say, the actual resolution before us says, this was presented to us in July, and the projects proposed in July are in the best interest of the county to maintain and improve the county. Well, we went through a fairly elaborate process, I think with little hand signals, on what we thought were good ideas and what weren't. What I'm losing in this process is that absolutely nothing seems to have dropped out. It's dropped out of funding, yes, but actually to have something removed from the the CIP simply doesn't seem to be possible. And so as we sit here today, even though many of us opposed some of these various capital projects that may not even be funded, some may be funded and some may not, it just seems to me that either this resolution has to be recharacterized as simply approving 2019 and 20 capital projects, and the rest is what the rest is. As the administrator said, this is going to be addressed next spring. We'll get some priorities. Maybe we have a plan next spring, but I don't intend to approve all of the projects on the list because that's what this resolution says I'm doing, even though we've all said no. So that's one of the concerns that I have.
I'll try to address that. You were approving a plan, a 5-year plan. So like I said, all these projects are still part of the overall capital improvement plan. The board, in its wisdom, has chosen only to fund the plan in 2-year increments. Now, the board always, when you approve the funding for the projects on the 2-year list of recommendations, you've deemed that is the board's priority for funding. We do not have the ability to fund a 5-year capital improvement plan. And so it was our recommendation years ago to take it in 2-year increments in terms of funding. But that doesn't mean that the rest of these projects fall off the plan. I mean, a plan is just that. It's a plan. What you are approving this evening, in addition to that plan, is the funding for the 2-year increment. And so it's not that those projects have evaporated or fallen off the radar screen. They're still there, and they will have to be readdressed next year to determine whether or not in the 2021 and going forward, there will be funding for these projects. I don't know how else to address your question, but that's my best effort.
Supervisor Nordstrand.
What I'm trying to understand is why is this process different than 2016? Why are we saying in 2016 we were approving a capital improvement plan and funding 2 years, in that case 17 and 18. And, we had, a management report describing that plan. None of that is present here today. So something happened in the process between 16 and 18 that has changed. The very title of the resolution isn't the same. We don't even have a process right now, as far as I know, to approve a 5-year capital plan. I don't know when that would happen, if not now. That's what I'm trying to understand.
Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Hanson.
Mr. Chair, is there a process by which we can answer questions before we come to a meeting? This type of questioning seems almost the type of thing that should happen at a committee or at a committee of the whole. there seems to be some rhetorical questioning going on, and I almost feel frustrated that it seems for out of frustration or professed lack of knowledge that could be cured simply by coming in and discussing things with the administrator and the finance director.
Well, let me try to address this again. I don't think the process is that much different. The wording on the resolution might be slightly different. If you feel more comfortable amending the title of the resolution to include that it's approving the 5-year CIP and the 2-year funding, that's fine. I don't think the process that we're presenting this evening is much different at all than what was done 2 years ago when we approved the funding for 17 and 18. So to me, it's identical. It might look different. The resolution might be worded slightly different, but it's accomplishing the same exact thing.
Supervisor Peterson.
There can be philosophical discussions, I guess, but some trust has to be put into the administration. And by approving this, I'm not expecting them to go out and spend money in a reckless way. There are, I think, ways to remove things from the CIP if enough folks feel that needs to be. But I would remind also everybody that this was a unanimous vote by the administration committee, which has mixed views. So I will support this.
Supervisor Octroff, you had something?
Mine has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but mine, I would like to see the date on each plan that it was brought forward so that we know how many years it's been in the KIP and how many years maybe it hasn't been funded. And then if a plan is taken off, it can be in red or parentheses with a description of why it was taken off. That may not have happened yet since we're on our first round, but I personally would like to know if something's been, I mean, if something's been in here for 8 years, like 6 years from now, I would like to know why it hasn't been funded. But if we don't know how long it's been in here, and we have a lot of new board members that have no idea, I mean, I just think putting the date that it was first brought forward that this would be a good, that this is something they want done would be of interest and of value to us supervisors.
Well, we, in your monthly packet, your financial packet, you get a monthly progress report on the CIP projects. And so that has a list of all the projects. And just as a reminder, we've only been in this for 3 years. So we had a 2016 CIP, which was 1 year, and then 17 and 18, which was a 2-year. Now we're looking at recommending the next 2 years. And so we've only been funding capital improvement plans in St. Croix County for 3 years. I'll work with Ken to see with our monthly CIP progress report, which you get on a monthly basis, maybe we can designate which year, 2016, 17, 18, 19, if this gets approved, we can designate which year the project is. And so if you look at that report, you'll be able to see, and it has every single project that was approved by the board and whether or not any dollars have been spent.
Right, but I mean, I don't care about seeing it every month. I mean, when you give your yearly statement, it would be nice to have that information in here, like, okay, this one was brought forward this year, it was been completed, this one has been brought forward for 3 years, nothing's been done. That's just what I'm trying to get at is, and if we start from the beginning, it's going to be a lot more helpful than if we try and start in the middle and go back.
Okay, that's a good suggestion.
Yeah, I have a specific question about a specific item on the plan, and that's, I guess, the last item on the list that's funded, and it's park facilities for new park property on Bass Lake. And over 2 years, we have $105,000 that we're going to commit to funding for that. And I don't, we had a public hearing on our outdoor rec plan last week at Community Development Committee meeting, and we had a little report in the packet about Bass Lake, and I gather that the DNR owns that landing, and we have a maintenance agreement of some sort. I don't know if we derive some income from that or not. No revenues were in the plan at all, so which I think was neglectful. But the other thing is that you total up the cost for what this is showing at our public hearing, it's $36,000, and it shows that some of it's coming out of the park budget and the county budget, which would indicate that it wouldn't need KIP funding. So I question why that is on here at all, and to the tune of $105,000 specifically, with no other delineation of what we're going to spend that money for. And I've witnessed that we've had other items in our KIP from 2 years ago that we had no delineation about what they were supposed to be spent on, and they basically got diverted to other purposes, which which I wouldn't have approved of at all. So I don't, frankly, I'm going to make a motion to delete the 105 for the Bass Lake Park facilities. I'm going to make that motion from the KIP.
You want to amend that resolution then?
Is that what I want to do?
Right,
Okay.
you want to amend that resolution?
I want to amend the
to
resolution.
take that portion off.
Delete that $105,000. I'm depending on
Yep.
the other committees for the diligence in terms of reviewing the other items that are on this list that I have no understanding of. And if we want to put this up on the screen, I'd be happy to provide it. We can do that, right?
Okay. We have a motion on the floor to amend. Do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
Bob, further along? You have a motion and a second on the floor to amend the resolution to drop that last portion off. So is there any discussion on that amendment?
It's project 10009, park facilities for a new park property on Bass Lake. It is about 3/4 of the way down the page. I think packet page 205, I think it is, if my packet is correct. I don't think that's correct. It's project 1009. It's in the, if you start at the very top of the page, it's in the third bucket of projects. It's the second to the last one in the third bucket. You find it?
Right, I'm seeing $17,500.
One, 3 zeros and 9. Yes, 10009.
Mr. Chairman.
Any other discussion on that amendment?
Mr. Chairman.
So if there's no further discussion on it, Supervisor Nordstrand.
I think the supervisors, the $17,500 is the grant funding. It isn't the actual project funding.
Okay.
And if I could say to the motion, it seems to me we have a responsibility when it comes to capital expenditures to have some clear statement of what the funds are going to be spent on. It's designed to be an expenditure that will last some period of time and be fairly specific, both in terms of budget and in terms of purpose and outcome. In this particular case, I think we're somewhat lacking on that, and I think Supervisor Coulter's pointed out we're somewhat lacking in terms of the actual numbers. So
I don't have the project description in front of me, but I'm sure there was a detailed project description in that original packet of information that was given to the board in July. We had project descriptions for each project, and we had the department heads present to present each and every project, and the board gave a preference, yea or nay. And so I don't, the information is there, it's a matter of going back and finding it. So the department head is here. I'm not going to call her up to answer any of your questions unless you have questions directly of the director.
Is there any other discussion on this amendment? If there isn't, we have the motion second. Supervisor Hanson.
This isn't, I'm seeing over the course of 2 years, really nominal improvements on a piece of property that's new into the inventory. We're charged with providing public service. Parks are something that makes the county a decent place to live. It's part of economic development. People want to move to a place that provides services that go beyond just a road to get back and forth to work. We are charged with providing low-impact use of property that we are taking care of. We don't own very many of the properties that we are stewards of. We don't own Glen Hills Park, but we sure run it, and we run it well. This property won't be accessible to the public unless we fix it up a little bit. We have a responsibility to do that. We just won a really significant award from the governor's office, from the DNR, for the work that we've done. And now we're just going to take the rug out from underneath the people that have done that work. It's a fine thing.
Supervisor Coulter.
Yeah, well, there's several improvements listed on this, including fish cribs, chip sealing a parking lot area, and doing some lot striping and parking design, and reviewing some stormwater pond alternatives, working with the DNR to repair the launch. At any rate, there's some projects on this list, but it's indicating that it comes out of the county budget or the park budget, not the KIP. And there's no designation under the KIP, as far as I've been able to tell, what it's going to be spent for. And I don't, and there's such a disparity in the numbers. Now, this is a small deal, but it happens to be a deal that I'm better acquainted with than most because I'm on that committee. So that's, I'm not trying to pull the rug out from underneath anybody. So, and I resent that characterization, frankly.
Let's get back to the point at hand. So, understand. We have a motion to amend on the floor and a second. So if I don't see any more discussion or any questions, we're going to vote on that. It's a tie. What do we do on a tie?
It's defeated.
It's defeated. So it's tied, it's defeated. So we'll move on with the original resolution. Is there any other Supervisor Nordstrom?
I have some questions about, or want to raise some concerns about the Glen Hills Park Picnic Shelter funding. The request is for $20,000, which is a nominal sum in comparison to the rest of it. But we also have to keep in mind that this is a continuation of a project for $100,000 last year. Okay, so this is project number 10010. So $100,000 was allocated to this in the prior CIP. based upon the reports from the administrator on that spending that he talked about earlier, none of the money has been spent. Now, I understand from a report that he provided to some of us who did make inquiries about these things that there's an intent to proceed with this project, that is to replace the Glen Hills picnic area shelter. Now, here's my concern. This project, if you go back and look at the 2016 KIP, you will see two projects that relate to shelters at Glen Hills Park. One is the group area shelter, okay? There's a group area, camping area, and there's a shelter there. The other one is a picnic area shelter. They were funded separately, okay? They were two different items. The Glen Hills group area shelter was what was funded with the $100,000. So that was going to be $100,000 for 2018, and according to the last plan, it was to be $350,000 this year. Okay, that's what is described as Glen Hills Group Area Shelter with kitchen facilities. Now, there was another project that wasn't funded in the 17 and 18 cycle that was the Replace Glen Hills Picnic Area Shelter. The request for 2019 was going to be $10,000 and $290,000 in 2020. So we were going to replace shelters in the group area to the tune of $450,000, and we were going to replace shelters in the picnic area to the tune of $300,000 or $750,000 of shelter replacement totally. Now, something happened between that KIP and this KIP because project number 10010 that started out as the Glen Hills Group Area Shelter with kitchen facilities is now getting additional funding under the new name, Replace Glen Hills Picnic Area Shelter. In other words, a different part of the park and a different shelter that didn't have the $100,000 to start, as best I can tell, all right? So that's point one about this picnic shelter. It seems to be a mix of one area of the park and another area of the park. The other thing about this picnic area shelter is that if you look at the cost, okay, let's assume if you read into the detail, you'll find out that in the July 2018 Committee of the Whole project summary, we were going to remove, the update that we got from county administrator was scoped down to basically use the $100,000 from the other project and an additional $20,000 that's on our moniker here. And it was described to me by the county administrator summary as this was the result of a scope decrease to two small shelters with no kitchen facilities to stay within budget. The small shelters were part of the original budget. Okay, that's information that I got from the county administrator and the finance director. So my question is this: if you look at the plans, the Glen Hills master plan, and you look at the outdoor recreation plan, and you assume, it's unclear to me where we're going to build a picnic shelter, how many we're going to build, maybe two, according to this recent update. So that would be about $60,000 a piece, give or take. And are we going to tear the old ones down? We now have two rather sizable picnic shelters. I was out to look at them. To me, they looked pretty good, but I understand there's differences of opinion about that. But we've got $120,000 in the budget to build two small picnic shelters. Perhaps in the group area, perhaps in the picnic area. I honestly don't know because it doesn't say. And this particular description says we're going to replace the Glen Hills Picnic Shelter, which tells me we're going to tear it down. Which, by the way, in the master plan says it costs $8,000 just to tear the thing down. So I'm not sure this particular proposal is ready for prime time. That's what I'm saying. I don't want to tear down 2 or 1 of the picnic shelters and replace them with perhaps 1, perhaps 2 small shelters until we know what we're doing. So my proposal here is to remove the $20,000 for the Glen Hills, replacing the Glen Hills Picnic Shelter, Project 10010, and perhaps we can get some clarity in the future and we can add something back, but for now, frankly, I don't think it's clear at all. That's my motion.
That's another amendment, correct?
Motion to amend, yeah.
Yeah. Let me ask this question. Maybe we should send this whole resolution back to committee and get it straightened out so that everybody's on the same page. I don't know. Pat, what do you think on that? I don't know what to do here. We're making a lot of, trying to get changes done, and we're going around circles. Would that make sense, to make a motion to send it back to committee?
I don't think that it makes a lot of sense to send it back to the committee. I think that the recommendation in front of you is solid, and if there's a project or 2 in here that you don't feel are adequately described, then pull the project, but don't pull the plug on the whole darn plan. If there's a project in here you don't agree with, take it out. But this is the best recommendation coming from the administrator and the administration committee, and I stand by it. So no, I don't think that's the right thing to do.
Okay, I have a motion to amend. Do I have a second to that? Supervisor Coulter seconded. So now it's open for discussion. Supervisor Hanson?
Sure, with regard to these shelters, the big shelters have wooden posts holding the roofs up. Years ago, and this is quite a few years ago, somebody decided the right thing to do, because they were rotting on the bottom, would be to bolster them with cement. But anybody who understands structural repair and engineering would know to cut the darn things off at a certain height and then pour your cement pillar underneath it and attach the 2 pieces. But they didn't do that. They put a form around the existing wood and they poured the cement right over it, and that wooden post is still rotting underneath there. So what we have is 2 structurally, and if we had an engineer take a look at it, probably dangerous structures. They should probably be condemned and torn down. This is a sound plan that's been reviewed by my committee, voted on by my committee, approved by my committee, handed over to the administrator, who said, yeah, that looks like a good plan, trusting that the operational quality of the Community Development Department is sound. And what we're doing here is parsing the operational integrity of that department, which has proven itself capable. Again, I encourage you to please approve this plan and trust that they will do their job with integrity.
President Nordstrand.
Can I just ask where the 2 shelters that are funded are going to be built? And are we tearing down the old shelters? I mean, is that a simple enough question? I mean, I'm not asking to get involved in the details.
It's a simple question. I don't know if Chairman Hanson can answer that or if you want to rely on staff.
Well, I don't want to take the chance of flubbing it, but I'm going to turn to Ellen and correct me if I'm wrong, but we're going to take down the 2 that are there. We're going to put 2 smaller shelters. You're absolutely right. And we're going to put them, help me out, Ellen.
The intent is to take down, or to put up 1 new shelter, small.
Yeah, you're going to have to come up here.
And then to,
Hanson
Why don't we
can
just bring Ellen up to this
Hanson
mic
can
so we can
repeat it.
hear what she's saying?
I'll bring Ellen up, because I know there's going to be one detail that I miss, and then it'll be a problem. So we're going to make sure that we get it exactly right. This plan is a good plan. That the exact placement of these shelters is important, and I want to make sure you understand it.
as you mentioned, the reason for the scope change is because of the master plan identifying in the big picture that there would be a better location for a large shelter with picnic facilities. So what we would like to do, what we've always wanted to do, is put up some small shelters. We only have 2 shelters at Glen Hills. Both are very large. They're not very popular. They're dark. They're not very conducive to use. The one does not have electricity. Yes, there was a scope shift, a small one, from the group area to the picnic area, but both were identified in the original submittals back in 2016. We would focus only on the picnic area, put up one over by the playground. We've already identified 2 sites, and then the other would be to try to repair, replace, fix the existing one generally in that location. Smaller, personally, what I would hope we would do is put a smaller one up in that location. How small it would be hasn't been determined. It would depend on the pricing we would get. And we did look into pricing when we originally did this. We went to 2 recently constructed locations. City of Hudson had recently built a picnic shelter with restrooms, and when we submitted in 2016, they had built a picnic shelter with restrooms and kitchen facilities, and that's where those prices came from, of over $300,000 and higher. That was already about 4 years old, and that we took their price and we added an element. And we also went to another source. Went to the Willow River State Park and looked into the costs of their recently completed picnic shelters. So we used recent examples, knowing that we still would have to bid this out and get it decided. So, but also understanding that once we did the master plan, that perhaps the existing locations of both shelters are not a good idea for a larger location, for a larger facility with kitchen facilities. We felt that then let's try to cut this back and do some of the other projects we originally wanted to do, which, as it says in this description, we'd like to see quite a few more small shelters, because that's what the public's asking us for, is smaller shelters.
Thanks, Ellen.
So, President Nordstrand.
So we're leaving the large shelters up, or we're going to fix them? It sounds like we're going to fix them. The one at the picnic area is coming down, and we're going to replace it with 2.
That's right.
And the one in the group area is going to be fixed. Is that the plan?
To stay unless we were allowed to use the money on that. At this point, we weren't will be allowed to use the money.
Only if there's funds to repair it, we'll do that. And if
So
there's
as
not,
it stands right now, the $100,000 from 2017 is for the group shelter, right? That's what it says in the KIP from last year.
this is going to go for taking down the shelter, which is faulty with the rotten legs, and putting up 2 smaller ones near the playground area. That's what this money is for.
So I just want to be sure that this actually is sustainable in the long run, because frankly, the administrator has removed any other picnic shelter funding from the budget. Okay, there's no more, the $350,000 is gone, the other $290,000 is gone. There's $120,000 for picnic shelter repair and replacement at Glen Hills, and that's all there is in the 5-year plan.
And when you consider how little that is compared to what they spent in Hudson and Willow River, I beg you not to take that out. We need to fix the one that's fallen apart.
As long as we now understand what it's for, and it's limited to $120,000, I'm for it. I'd withdraw the motion.
Okay, so we're back to the original resolution. If there's no more, Supervisor Long.
I think in the past, I think we can avoid this trap that we're in right now because since I've been here, at least, we've always had separate votes on approving the KIP and then approving funding. That's what we've done the last 3 times that I've been here. And I think to avoid this, we should go back to that process. So it is a slightly different process than what we're seeing here, because we're approving the KIP and the funding at the same time. So I would like just to suggest that in the future, we go back to that process, and let's make sure we are all comfortable with the KIP first, get that settled, and then we can move on to a separate vote on the funding. Just a suggestion.
Okay. I guess I'll go back to the original motion and second. Pass that resolution funding that funding plan for 2019 and 20 CIP projects. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. We've had a lot of discussions. I think we'll vote on that at this time. Is that up there?
I need Dan's second.
So at this time, we'll vote. Two noes and the rest yeses, so that passes. So we're done with that part of the business. We're looking for requests for future agenda items. Anybody have any? If you have any, you can give them to Cindy or myself or Pat Weiser-Mutaden.
I don't know if it's an agenda item, but I would like us to look at, and maybe this is a different place for it, but the start time of 9 a.m. for the morning meetings that we're going to be having in the future. I think it's too late probably for our committee of the whole, but for our meetings coming up for the county board, the Tuesdays, is it November, December, January, February, March? Is there any option for starting at 8:30? Is that something we could consider? Yeah, we're 8. As a working person, it requires me to take almost a half a day off because I don't know when the meeting's going to end. Starting at 9, it could go till noon, and it's quite.
I can't hear tonight. Hearing is shot.
Is there, I mean, if there's a consensus of the board, I mean, if,
I think the board chair has some degree of authority to change the meeting time, and if it's a half hour, I don't really know what the big deal would be as a practical matter.
Well, maybe, could we make it 8?
we're all here at 7:30, so 8 o'clock would work for staff.
And what time is this going to be then?
8.
8 o'clock at night?
8 a.m. in the morning.
In the morning?
In the morning.
8 o'clock in the morning? I don't have a problem with that. If you don't have a problem, 8 o'clock in the morning, that's fine. What?
8 o'clock for all the day meetings.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
Good idea.
So we'll make that change. We'll go with the
So ordered.
county clerk's report. And nothing there. Any announcements? No announcements? Thank you, everyone. We are adjourned.